With firm resolve and patriotic purpose, United States has unleashed one of the most consequential and hard-hitting moves in recent memory. US has sanctioned oil giants, Rosneft and Lukoil, crippling the financial arteries that have long pumped life into the Kremlin's war machine. This is American power used for purpose. This is liberty defending itself. The decision, signed off by President Donald Trump and announced by the U.S. Department of the Treasury, is being hailed by allies as one of the boldest economic strikes since the Cold War, and by critics as a risky gamble that could rattle global markets. But inside Washington, one message rang clear: America is done letting tyranny profit. At a press briefing early Thursday morning, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent didn't mince words. Now is the time to stop the killing and for an immediate ceasefire, he said, flanked by the American and Ukrainian flags. Given President Putin's refusal to end this senseless war, Treasury is sanctioning Russia's two largest oil companies that fund the Kremlin's war machine. The sanctions freeze any U.S. assets held by Rosneft and Lukoil, bar Americans and U.S. companies from engaging in transactions with them, and extend to hundreds of subsidiaries and trading affiliates linked to the firm's massive global networks. Rosneft, Russia's largest oil producer, and Lukoil, its top private energy firm, together account for nearly half of all Russian oil production. That's more than 5 million barrels per day, roughly 5% of global output, the economic bloodline of a nation already under siege from earlier rounds of US and European sanctions. For nearly 3 years, the Kremlin's war in Ukraine has endured on oil dollars. Every barrel sold, every tanker shipped, every covert transaction routed through shadow fleets, they've kept missiles flying and the Russian state alive. By hitting Rosneft and Lukoil directly, Washington aims to drain the funding stream that Moscow depends on to pay for its weapons, soldiers, and propaganda. This isn't just about money, said a senior administration official. It's about accountability. You cannot murder civilians and occupy nations while cashing checks from the global economy. That ends today. According to Treasury data, Rosneft alone generated over $230 billion in revenue last year, much of which flowed into state coffers. Lukoil's global reach, stretching from Iraq's West Korna-2 oil field to European fuel stations, gave Russia international legitimacy. Now, those channels are being severed. The market reaction was immediate and violent. Brent crude jumped 5.2% within hours of the announcement, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate rose above $90 per barrel for the first time since midsummer. European energy traders scrambled to secure alternative supplies, and Indian refiners, some of the biggest buyers of Russian crude, were reportedly reviewing or halting Russian contracts. Energy ministers across Asia and Europe convened emergency meetings to assess the fallout. But in Washington, the response was calm and deliberate. A senior energy advisor to the president told reporters, "We expected this volatility. Freedom has a cost, but the cost of doing nothing is far greater." Indeed, the administration emphasized that while the sanctions could tighten supply in the short term, they will ultimately strengthen Western energy independence and punish aggression. The White House has reportedly coordinated with U.S. oil producers and Gulf allies to stabilize global markets and ensure sufficient supply to key partners. In an address from the Oval Office Thursday night, President Trump described the sanctions as a turning point in restoring global peace and U.S. strength. "America does not seek war," he said. "We seek peace through strength. But we will not stand by while a dictator funds murder with money made from the free world's markets. The time has come for Russia to end its war, and for America to lead again." The speech, carried live across all major networks, was framed by the image of the American flag reflected in the president's desk. His tone was resolute, his message unmistakable. The era of appeasement is over. For everyday Americans, the move could mean temporary pain at the pump. Analysts warn that gasoline prices may inch upward as markets adjust, but officials are confident that U.S. production and allied coordination will absorb the shock. Energy economist Dr. Lisa Hargrove noted, "It's not 1973 anymore. The U.S. is the world's largest energy producer. If anyone can lead a stable transition while enforcing moral leadership, it's America." Still, the sanctions could reshape global energy politics overnight. Europe, already weaning itself off Russian fuel, now faces the task of replacing millions of barrels once bought through middlemen. Asian importers, particularly India and China, will have to decide whether to defy Washington or align with the Western order. This is America reasserting that energy is not just a commodity, it's leverage, it's policy, it's moral power, said former U.S. Ambassador to NATO Richard Dwyer. We're not just sanctioning oil, we're sanctioning the illusion that tyranny can coexist with global trade. The sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil aren't just another policy move. They're a declaration of values. They mark the moment when the world's leading democracy reaffirmed its duty not only to protect its interests, but to defend what's right. We've tried diplomacy. We've waited. We've hoped for reason, said Secretary Besant in closing. But when evil profits from oil and the world watches, America does not flinch. We act. And act it has. In one day, the United States reshaped the global energy order, redrew the moral boundaries of trade, and reminded every nation that freedom, though costly, is worth every drop of courage it demands. As the sanctions ripple outward, the coming weeks will test the resilience of global markets and the strength of international resolve. But in Washington, one thing is certain: America has reclaimed its mantle as the defender of liberty and the enforcer of accountability. The sanctions may hurt, but the silence of inaction would hurt far more. And as the sun set over the Capitol Dome tonight, one phrase echoed across cable news and social media alike: America leads again.